The past couple of months on Podcraft has seen us run with our agree or disagree format, where we talk through whether or not we're on board with certain podcasting hot takes. I really like this format, but wanted to change it up slightly, so we're going to reframe it as cut or keep, which feels like a subtle nod to the fact that we run podcast editing software Alitu. So on this episode, we'll spotlight things like sending guest questions in advance, running pre-calls before interviews, cold opens, podcast awards, listening at 2 times speed, and even the venerable Blue Yeti. Would we keep these in podcasting or cut them? All will be revealed on this episode of Podcraft. Let's see how Jacob starts us off.
Okay, I've got my eyes on dynamic ad insertion.
Oh. So keep. And I reckon with every one of these there's going to be certain caveats, isn't there? Like, dynamic advertising is a brilliant tool to have it in your arsenal, but it could obviously be deployed terribly. I think we've talked in recent episodes just about, bad examples of this. The ad placement, sometimes you'll hear literally in the middle of a word that will cut to an ad. It's just obviously been stuck in there without a care or some sort of automation. And then the relevance of the ads as well is a major issue. Like if it's pretty irrelevant ads, that there's an argument that at scale you might be able to still make a go of that. But then there's ads that could directly contradict what you're doing on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Remember a few weeks ago we talked about, was it Beef Box on the vegan podcast, that sort of thing. So, but in the main, dynamic ads are a brilliant tool, and I've been doing some work recently with my own podcast, just, taking sponsorship a bit more seriously and trying to package up something that I think would be appealing to potential sponsors in my niche. And it's great to be, now that I'm putting this all together and articulating it, having that dynamic ad insertion is a brilliant tool, because I'm putting together a 4-week package. Nobody's taken me up on this yet, but I've only reached out to one company so far. So we'll give it time. But, what I'm offering them is you're going to be on 4 episodes here. It's basically a month. But not only that, your ads will be on the entire back catalogue as well, which, through the help of my analytics at Red Circle, that is pretty much approximately 10,000 total downloads in a month. So that number straight away is a very attractive proposition, I think, to a lot of companies, especially when they're dealing with a highly niche audience that's super relevant to what they're doing. So just the ability to offer that for podcasters, not just myself, but any podcaster, I think that's a great tool. So yeah, I'm going to keep dynamic ads in, but I'll let you come in with your own thoughts as well.
I think you've covered beautifully everything from the side of the podcaster. But I think from the side of the listener, and I agree with everything you're saying completely, it's a wonderful tool. It is very flexible, and yeah, platforms are now starting to offer dynamic ad insertion to podcasts with really quite small audiences, so you can kind of get started with that and make a few pennies really early. Like RSS.com quite recently just brought out dynamic ad insertion for podcasts of I don't know if it was 100,000 downloads a month. It was not huge. It was pretty attainable for most podcasts. But on the side of the listener, yeah, you kind of started with where and how they are used really affect the experience, I think, of actually listening to the podcast. My preference is I want it sort of demarcated. I want the host to acknowledge that there's going to be adverts. And I think that's a little bit unpopular, actually. I've seen some people in podcast advertising land specifically speaking against that, which I can understand from the side of the advertiser and possibly the podcaster as well. But I think in terms of listening experience, which I think is in the interest of the very much in the interest of the podcaster, you do want to also want to respect your listener, and you've got to make money. I think most listeners will recognize that that's fine and fair, and They'll particularly appreciate if the ads are relevant to them, if there's going to have to be ads, all these things. But yeah, I'd like there to be clear slots. There's a podcaster that I think does this really well, called Blind Boy's podcast. He's an Irish man that talks through just, it's just like variety podcaster kind of thing, but he has what he calls the ocarina pause. And he has a little ocarina and he gives it a wee little blow, and he pauses and his ads play, and then he comes back and he plays the ocarina again, and it's a daft wee thing, but it's like sort of acknowledging, right, we're gonna have ads now, we're gonna have a wee break, we're gonna hand you off to these other people who aren't me, so like just prepare yourself because my voice is going away for the next minute, and then we'll come back and we'll resume. Yeah, and I kind of like that approach. It's probably a bit extra. You don't need to be doing, little kind of gimmicky things to demarcate your ad slots, but yeah, no, I do. I would like for podcasters to acknowledge the ad slots, plan them in in content, um, not just kind of insert them. I mean, yeah, it's dynamic ad insertion, but you can pick your slots and you can build your slots into the content. You know what I mean? And sort of, yeah, I don't know. That always feels better to me. It feels more respectful of me as a listener. Yeah, I think that's the other side. But yeah, it's a really cool tool. It's a really good tool. But like everything, it's like, it's easy to access and it's easy to sort of misuse as well.
So I take it you're keeping, but with certain caveats.
Yeah, for sure, definitely keeping. Sorry, should have opened with
that. All right then. Here's one for you to run with, and that is pre-calls before interviews. Cut or keep?
Yeah, I'm gonna say keep. And it doesn't even need to be a long thing, right? Doesn't even necessarily need to be on the same day. It can be like the week before, a couple of days before, whatever. I think even just like a 10, 15 minute kind of conversation to roughly kind of discuss what to expect in the recording, but also just like a sort of chemistry type thing as well, just to get to know each other a bit. Like you don't. I've done this a few times. I had a few people on Creator Craft, the other podcast that we were running, and kind of ran some interviews there. I actually didn't really get a chance to know some of those people before, and found it quite an odd feeling for me, and I'd imagine for them, to kind of dig in, like kind of deep into some of the things that we're doing and about them without any sort of pre-existing relationship, however small. Do you know what I mean? I think it's quite important. Yeah, just like technically, just to make sure the episode goes smoothly and they know what to expect. But just chemistry wise, I think it makes it more comfortable for both people as well, or however many people it is. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, all good points there. I am actually going to say cut here.
Yeah.
There definitely is a place for them, but certainly in 2026, I'm undecided on whether the cons outweigh the pros for a couple of reasons. So yeah, maybe in 2013, when people weren't as used to doing what we're doing now, sitting in front of the computer and talking to each other through a little virtual window. I think the pandemic period, certainly most people had an experience of that at some point, whether through their work or those hellish family quizzes that we were all doing. So, maybe these days it's not as necessary to have to coach people and have to fix sound issues. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen; it definitely does. But there's another danger with the pre-call as well, and I know it's all about trying to manage it, but I've found in the past, and this doesn't necessarily have to be on a call, but when you speak to someone that you're about to record with, and whether it's just that person being friendly or being nervously chatty, they'll start getting into stuff that would be absolute gold to be recorded in the show. They'll start telling a story, and you're like, whoa, stop. I don't want to hear this just now. The way you're going to tell this is going to be great, and you're not when I have to then say to you, tell me the thing you told me before you record it, there's never quite that same energy.
Yeah.
So there's that danger as well. It's just that they start giving you great content, and this literally isn't a recording. And the other thing is just the footprint on you and your guest time. And I know, this should only be a 10-minute call, but it's something else to arrange. It's another footprint in your time. So again, not saying don't do them, but I don't do them myself for those reasons. And yeah, for that reason, I'm going to say that, yeah, I'll cut the pre-call.
Very, very fair. Makes sense. It's a more seasoned opinion than mine.
All right then. Have a wee look at the list and
a wee shifty. All right. Sending questions over in advance.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of ties in to the last one in a sense. And it's good that you've brought this up, because there was a couple of things that, I should have also mentioned, is that there's, that it doesn't need to be a pre-call to get some of these details. Like, you could approach someone and say to them, if there's any particular good stories that you have, any particular good anecdotes, let me know, and I'll know then to ask you about them in a natural way. You won't have to try and sandwich them in. So this ties into what you're asking me now, sending questions in advance. And this is a funny one, because I have to keep or cut this, and there's so much nuance here. So I'd say broadly cut. I don't really think it's necessary for 99.9% of interview conversations, but in certain circumstances with certain questions, it is good to give people a heads up in advance. If I'm going to ask you, Jacob, for favourites or top tens, or your favourite book of all time, that isn't a question that I think it's fair just to ask somebody in the moment, because they'll either pick something very pretentious that sounds like a good answer, or it'll just be something they've read recently. And I don't necessarily think any of us would do an answer like that justice off the cuff. So there are certain questions, yeah, that I would send over in advance, but they're rare. So if I have to pick something here, I'll go with cut. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, similar. I think I would cut, but I do think that, agreeing on topics, at least broadly, beforehand is probably a good idea. And similar to what you're saying about specific questions that are just going to be like tough to answer in the moment, in a sort of helpful and full way, yeah, send them over. Like, I specifically don't like the idea of sending over, like, here's the 20 questions that we're going to go through in this interview. I really don't like the idea of an interview being prepared to that degree. I think it eliminates the whole, you may as well just, go back and forth in email and write it up. It kind of defeats the point of having a podcast format sort of interview. But yeah, I think at least broadly agreeing on topics so that the person you're interviewing can come in the right sort of headspace. I think that is important. And yeah, very much agree. There are certain questions that you want to give people just a heads up and say, have a wee think about this so that you can answer it truthfully. Because it is hard sometimes to, on the spot, answer truthfully. Like you say, you will just end up picking something because you're kind of a deer in the headlights or whatever. So yeah, I would also cut, but probably replace with those two little caveats.
And I think based on our conversation last week about, we got pretty deep on like people using AI creatively, quote unquote creatively. And the podcast conversation is arguably one of the last bastions of grey matter now, where like, we're chatting here and we can't feasibly use AI to do our thinking for us here. We've got to use our brains, don't we?
For sure.
So
I didn't see these see this list until 2 minutes before we started recording. It could not
Yeah.
be more real.
Just into Claude and give me some really good takes on these. Yeah. So yeah, and sending over questions in advance. I mean, you would hope your guest wouldn't do it, but who's to say they're not going to be? ChatGPT, give me. This is the podcast I'm going on. Give me answers that the audience of this show are really going to love, and it's just like, well, what? Who wins here? So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, dipping back into the hat. Running jokes, ongoing jokes. Would you cut or keep? And what I mean by this is this is cross episode stuff. Could be a callback to an episode like last year or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, strong keep. I think people have to be allowed to have their fun. Even podcasters. I don't think there's any good argument against that. Yeah, no, absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, there's an argument like, you have like people are going to feel out of the loop or whatever, but tough shit. Go listen to the rest of the episodes. That's my stance. Yeah, pretty clear cut on that one. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going to keep them. You're right. We don't want our show. I know there are certain topics out there, obviously, where laughter and jokes and that wouldn't be appropriate. But for the majority of podcasts, they're not necessarily funny comedy podcasts, but the hosts should be able to have a laugh from time to time. I still think there's an elegant way you have to do it, if you like. I wouldn't want to open an episode and make new listeners feel completely lost because I'm referencing this and that and like calling back this, and any new listener that hears that is just going to think this is a party and I've arrived too late. I've got my nose pressed against the window here. So yeah, I think these things, you maybe have to be, or you don't maybe, I think you definitely have to be tactful about it. Maybe drip feed in for the uninitiated and get them on board. Maybe now and then you might want to explain why you're laughing about a certain thing, reference that episode, etc., etc.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You give a bit of context around it. Like, you don't want to be sort of gatekeeping anything either. But yeah, it shouldn't be. Yeah, definitely shouldn't be something that you should be afraid of either. I don't think. Because I don't know. It's also a nice feeling, kind of dipping into a new podcast and realizing, there's things to learn here. There's lore to this show. I like that.
Yeah.
I like a show with lore. Do you know what I mean? I like going back and kind of figuring it out. But yeah, like you say, you don't want to be feeling like you're late to the party and just trying to, you're never going to get there. So yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Your turn then.
All right. Cold opens.
So for anyone who doesn't know what a cold open is, it's basically a clip from the show, usually a compelling soundbite that you would edit to the very beginning of your podcast. And famously, we see this in TV, don't we? A lot of shows, you don't put on a TV show these days, and it goes straight into lengthy credits and music. You tend to get something at the start where you're like, we're in. And podcasts can do this really well. I'm going to go with keep in the main because I think it can be used very well. Is there a downside to the cold open? It can be a bit jarring if you have a playlist of, different episodes from different podcasts, and one of them ends and your cold open starts, and it's almost like a glitch because it sounds like you've just cut in the middle of an episode. People don't maybe realise what's going on. But again, that's an edge case. I think in the main, it doesn't take that long to do, and it can work really well. It can signify great value. So yeah, I can't find many faults with the cold open. So I'll keep. What about you?
Nice. they're a bit of a pet peeve for me, to be honest. I find them like the word is jarring, and that edge case seems to happen to me quite a lot. And I feel like I'll actually open the app and be like, oh shit, I've resumed this episode. Like I use Apple Podcasts, so it'll just like resume, even if it goes on to the next episode. In your download list, it'll just resume wherever you kind of left off. And I will often like go and look at the app. No, it hasn't. It's just a cold open, and I don't know. It's a minor sort of annoyance. It is a bit of an edge case, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. I do find them a bit jarring. I think like maybe like a little bit of sort of Sonic branding before the cold open. A little bit of a sort of intro, something just to signify this is the start of the episode, and here's what to expect. Like I think, yeah. But like fully cold opens, yeah, I find them a little bit jarring, a little bit annoying sometimes. But I don't know. I think that's definitely a personal thing. And like you say, it is a really good way to kind of hook people into where the meat of your episode is, without expecting them to listen 25 minutes in, that kind of thing. So great tool for a podcaster, but yeah, just be mindful of how you implement it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You could have that kind of sonic branding or ident, on this episode of Podcraft, and it cuts in dramatic music bed, and it's you saying that you hate cold opens. But at the same time, I don't know if that style of production's almost out of date at the moment. That borderline cheesy kind of, almost a bygone from TV or old school radio. I don't know. It just feels out of fashion just now. I think people want that more casual. I've just chucked this together casually, without much thought. I think people like their production to sound like that, even though it's not necessarily true that that's how it was. But
yeah, I mean, I get you, but I think there's probably a middle ground. Like,
yeah,
Podcraft's iconic dee at the beginning, you could sort of have that and just that without the sort of dramatic, like radio voice on this episode of Podcraft. You could just have the jingle sort of merging into a little bit of cold open, and then boom, back into the episode kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like podcasters are creative enough to figure this out and make me feel less jarred.
Very good point.
Figure it out, lads. For me.
Yeah, I always want does the that's the thing for the listener to get in touch about. Does the music just make you weep for Colin? Is it because it was always Colin that spoke first. I felt like that was, I mean, it literally was the end of an era when he stopped doing that. So
yeah,
yeah, a time for remembrance. Again, should point out,
moment of silence for Colin.
Colin very much alive and well. I was speaking to him literally like half an hour ago. All right. So that was, what was that? Cold opens, wasn't it? That was your one?
Yes.
All right. Somebody out there with their little buds in their ears is doing this right now to us. Speed listening, 1.5, 2 times, etc. Speed listening, cut or keep.
When I read that, my head went to speed editing, which very much for. But speed listening, I mean, is it for us to say? It depends exactly how much Adderall you take. Do you know what I mean? Like, how quickly do you need to ingest this information? I personally never listen on speed, ever.
What about ecstasy?
that neither. But yeah, I don't know. I just struggle to take it in. You know what I mean? Unless it's a very, very short thing. Yeah, no. So, like, for me personally, I'm gonna say cut. I don't like it. I don't I don't get much use out of it. Normally, a podcast is either like an informational thing or a leisure thing for me. It's never like I really must ingest this as quickly as possible kind of thing. Like, it just never seems to shake out that way for me. Maybe there are cases of that for people, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem super compatible with how people typically consume podcasts. What about you?
I agree with you. I would cut it too, because I'm not saying I've never done it. I just don't like it and don't do it these days. But yeah, it's the podcasting's not the right medium to just like, it's not a utilitarian delivery of information. There's so much more. If you just need info, there's so much more efficient ways to go out and just get raw info now. I don't think a podcast is the place for that. So, which leads me to like, what's the hurry here? Why are you rushing through this? If there's certain key info you need, maybe grab the transcript or just, Google it or whatever. I think a podcast is a bit more, you're hopefully getting value from the show, but it's coming with its bells and whistles of delivery and company, human connection. There's all these other things that I just don't think battering through it as fast as you can is really, I just don't really understand why you would do it. So, again, there'll be people literally listening now at double speed. I'm not criticising you. You've obviously, you must find it valuable enough, and that's fine. Keep doing it rather than like stopping. So, but for me, no, it's certainly not for me. So I'm going to cut it.
Very fair. Podcast awards.
Podcast awards.
I feel like this could be spicy.
Yeah. I don't have like a clear-cut answer for this at all, but I'm going to have to pick one, obviously, because that's how the game works. I feel like if I say cut, I'm a bit hypocritical, because like I have had podcasts win awards in the past, and I was really chuffed. So I'll go keep, but massive caveats to this. Like, there seems to be quite a lot of podcast awards these days, and I question the value in being, or the risk of being too distracted with trying to court your podcast around awards and stuff. Maybe you're paying money to enter them, maybe there's a submission process that demands you do certain things, send them over certain samples or whatever it is, the time cost, the money cost. I just wonder if the juice is worth the squeeze, even if you do win. Does somebody saying to you, I'm an award-winning podcaster, does that mean anything to anyone? Because I think almost anyone could say it, couldn't they? So, yeah, it's, there's definitely a place for them, and I think there's probably examples of people that have achieved great things off the back of winning certain awards, but I do feel there's probably a bit too many of them, and the worst of all is if they risk distracting you from what really matters, which is just turning up and creating great content for your audience. So, yeah, keep with an asterisk, I guess. What's your thoughts?
Depends on the award, doesn't it? I think there's an awful lot of them that I find quite a little bit sort of kind of vulgar. It's like, you got to pay us $500 to enter and yada, yada, yada. And I don't know about that. I think that an award, like you say, it's not going to change much, I don't think, for the podcast. Your listener doesn't care that you got an award. It is something for the podcaster. It's a recognition of your work. So the awards that your podcasts have won, how did that go down? Did you have to enter for them? Were you nominated for them?
So this is 12 or 13 years ago, so I'm dipping back into my old brain. So it was Mike and Isabella that ran them. back when they ran the UK Podcaster Awards.
Mhm.
I certainly didn't have to pay to enter it.
Yeah.
I think there was just, you got nominated from your peers, etc. It went
Yeah.
to, they had a panel of judges who would just listen to a few of your episodes, and they made a decision at the UK Pod event. So yeah, I know that that's a long time ago now. I don't necessarily know how many awards still follow that process,
Yeah.
and I understand that, you know, running an awards system or ceremony, I suppose, for lack of a better term, it must be a hard job. It's maybe made slightly easier when you're charging £500 an entry, though. So yeah, aye. Sorry, I'm jumping in here, and it's your turn to
No, no,
talk
no.
about.
I want you to understand because I am so pro that peer recognition, 100%. You know, if you are nominated by your peers and that, like that to me is the purpose of an award, right? Um, but yeah, it is tricky because these things do cost money to run. You do have to maybe pay for the time of, um, a panel of judges. You might have to pay for a venue, or you might have to, pay to have some room at some larger event, that kind of thing. Like it's not free to run. So I can understand why some of them do cost to enter, but it does also sour a bit for me because it means that possibly great podcasts who don't have the money to enter cannot be recognized at all. They are just excluded for economic reasons, and I find that quite minging. So yeah, I've no big ideas on how to on how you would change that. I'm sure there have been award ceremonies that have dealt with that and maybe had like purely merit based things as part of it or whatever. But yeah, there are definitely there's an area of the awards world that does just give me the ick a bit, and it is that a lot of people can be excluded for economic reasons. Um, but yeah, 100% for keeping peer recognition. Actually nominating someone that's worthy of it. It becoming a way for a smaller but valuable show that is doing something important to be recognized and hopefully grow them. That could have a sort of outsized impact on certain shows, certain posts. Uh, Very much pro that, but yeah, down with the down with big awards are doing it for the money. They will not survive the revolution.
All right, the Blue Yeti, keep or cut?
I once owned a Blue Yeti. Don't know if you know this, Matthew, but I once owned a Blue Yeti, and I
Right?
bought it not to podcast, but actually to make like game videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
It sounded shit. It sounded really bad, and I was so excited to have this thing because it looks cool, or it looked cool at the time. Just looks like, I don't know, like a microphone brand microphone in some ways. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna say cut because it's been around for so long. So many people have had so many problems kind of getting it to sound how they want it to sound, and it's like what you'd call a tarpit, for a beginner.
Yeah.
It's just yeah. I'm sure there's settings on it and ways to use it to make it sound absolutely fine, but it's not cheap. It's like, I don't know, it's just a flashy thing as a beginner you might end up using, and you can get a lot more for your money elsewhere. And I personally am sour towards it because I could never get it to sound how I wanted it to sound. So I'm gonna say cut. What about you?
Part of me wants to say keep for a couple of reasons. Like, I think it can be used very well, can sound very good. And it's a microphone that must have helped, albeit hindered some, many podcasters to create their content. So there's part of me is sentimental and wants to keep it, but yeah, I'll probably go with cut because, well, for the reasons you're saying, like it's certainly not the best value for money. And let's approach this from someone who's buying a microphone. I don't want to say anyone who uses a Yeti already that they should buy another microphone. That's not what I'm saying. Worst case scenario, you might need to just change a couple of settings, which we could get into here. If you don't think it sounds very good, but yeah, it's expensive for what you get. You'll get a much better mic for less. My favourite being the Samsung Q2U, which I'm using now. You'll use that in USB form and XLR form, and it's like a good £30 less, I think, to buy. And there's loads of mics as well that do the XLR USB thing nowadays too. And yeah, you get into the settings a wee bit. You touched on that, Jacob. There's 4 or 5 different polar patterns on the Yeti, and all of them are rubbish apart from cardioid, which is the pattern that you use to speak solo into a mic, which is really the only way you should ever use any mic, in my opinion. You shouldn't be sharing a mic unless it's a complete emergency. It's just not going to sound good. There's all sorts of issues with doing that. So as much as the Yeti will promise you things like, oh, just get get your D&D group round the table, 8 of yous, and put it on omnidirectional, and that'll record everyone. And it's like, it will technically, it won't sound good at all. Likewise, you've got the stereo setting. The idea is that you put it down between the 2 of yous and have a conversation over the table. I don't think any of these settings add any value. In fact, they make it worse because people accidentally use them and their audio sounds bad. So yeah, it's a shame. Like, I respect what the Yeti's brought to podcasts, and I certainly wouldn't advise anyone gets rid of theirs, but I think it's time new podcasters stopped being duped into buying it, because they're wasting their money and they're potentially going to struggle with their sound initially whilst they learn all the dials as well. So yeah, let's cut the Yeti. It's had a good run.
It has had a good run. How long has that been going? It must be at least 15 years.
2009 off the top of my head. We've got the internet machine in front of us, don't we?
Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Is it like particularly good for
2009.
anything? 2009. Wow.
Yeah, I was right. Mind you, I've wrote like 40 articles about it, so you'd hope I'd be right. Is the Blue Yeti good for anything?
Or is it just like, just not quite perfect for anything at all, but technically can do lots of things?
It can't, though. That's technically, you're right. Technically, it could claim to cater to loads of situations with those polar patterns. But yeah, I don't know why it got so popular. Maybe just 2009 was a different world, I guess, for consumer recording devices.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people recording content in 2009, really.
I think it's YouTube that made it popular. So many people would have it visible, and it just it does look cool, you know?
Yeah, it's a handsome mic.
Yeah.
It looks a lot better than the likes of the Q2U, which I've talked about. I think if I was on YouTube with my Q2U, you'd probably get, mind you, nobody would watch my videos, but you'd probably get somebody saying, that's an ugly mic. And couldn't really disagree. It's functional. But the Yeti, it's a legacy mic. And I think it's just gathered so much use over the years that I suppose if you Google what's the best mic for a podcaster, Google and all the LLMs and half the influencers out there are going to tell you the Yeti, aren't they? So you're on the back foot from the start.
Totally.
But again, if you've got one, please don't replace it based off of this. It can be used well, and I dare say you listen to this show, so you pay attention to these things, and I've no doubt you've got it all dialed in. So, is that it? We've got loads more of these, but we should keep them in the bag, shouldn't we?
And, yeah, definitely.
It's been a good one, though. Yeah, cut or keep. Sponsored, of course, by Ala2, our podcast maker tool. And if you're looking for a way to streamline your process and bring in a bit of extra help and automation to things like audio cleanup and all that good stuff, then please give us a wee shot. You can try it free for 7 days at alitu.com. That's ALITU.com. Thanks as always for joining me, Jacob. I always enjoy these wee chats, and looking forward to the next one already.
Thanks for having me. Bye.